Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be talking about something a little different.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that a listener wrote in about, and it's something I think we can all relate to at least a little bit.
Okay.
So basically, this listener is really passionate about animation and how different animation styles make them feel.
Interesting.
And specifically, they sent us this video essay that they made.
Okay.
That kind of explores this question of like why 2D animation hits different than 3D animation does for them.
Emotionally.
Yeah, emotionally, and just like why it speaks to them more. And, I'm sure we can all think about our favorite animated movies.
Yeah.
And whether they're 2D or 3D and what that means to us. So that's what we're going to be tackling today.
That sounds really fun. I think you've tapped into something that's super fascinating because so much of what they're describing in their essay is about this really deep connection to 2D. It goes beyond just, oh, I like the way this looks better. It's about how it makes them feel.
Totally.
And, they give some really great examples. Like, they talked a lot about how the original Lion King just hits them in the plat, feels way more than the 2019 remake does.
Totally.
And it's the same story.
Pretty much.
It's the same basic plot.
Yeah.
But the way that it's presented makes all the difference.
For sure.
And they talk about this with other movies, too.
Yeah.
Like the early Toy Story films, Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, yeah. Dragon Ball Z is a great example.
Even Winx Club, like a real range of stuff.
I'm not familiar with that one, but...
It's a magical girl show.
Okay.
But the point is, they're 27 years old and still find themselves drawn to that hand-drawn style.
Absolutely. And I think that's so interesting because it kind of speaks to that idea of like escapism.
Yeah.
And how 2D animation in particular has this ability to transport you to another world. That may be different from 3D because, like you were saying, the artist's hand is so present.
It's like you can see the love and care that went into every frame.
Yeah, and it almost like invites you into this world where anything is possible.
Totally. It's like the artist is saying, hey, come with me. Let's explore this together.
Exactly. But then we get to 3D animation.
Okay.
And the feeling is like totally different.
Yeah.
They even use some pretty strong words to describe it.
Oh, like what?
Well, they talk about it feeling cold, alienating, even like disconnected.
Wow.
And it's almost like by trying to be so realistic, some 3D animation kind of loses that emotional core.
I see what you mean. It's like the pursuit of realism can sometimes backfire.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where I think the technical stuff gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because, they mentioned that 3D characters sometimes lack the expressive faces that we see in 2D.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to the tools that animators are using.
No, so it's not necessarily like a lack of skill or anything.
Yeah. Right. It's more about the limitations of the technology itself.
So in 2D, every single line, every little detail is a conscious choice by the artist.
Exactly. But in 3D, you've got the pre-designed models and complex software that can sometimes make it really hard to capture those subtle nuances.
Like those tiny micro expressions that can convey so much emotion.
Right, exactly.
Huh, that's actually really interesting. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's something that's easy to overlook, but it makes a huge difference in how we connect with the characters.
Oh, for sure. And they brought up the 2019 Lion King again.
Oh, yeah.
As an example of that. Like the animals look incredibly lifelike, but there's something about their faces that just feels off.
Stiff.
Yeah. They can't quite convey the same range of emotion as their 2D counterparts.
It's like they're trapped behind a mask almost.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it all ties into this idea of the uncanny valley. Which I always find so fascinating.
It's super creepy.
It is. It's like when something looks almost human, but not quite. It can be really unsettling.
It triggers this primal fear response in us.
For sure.
Like our brains are saying, danger, something's not right here.
Totally. And I wonder if that's part of what's happening with some 3D animation.
Like, it's trying so hard to be real that it ends up pushing us away.
Instead of drawing us in.
Exactly.
Which is so bizarre.
It really is. And it leads us to what I think is the million-dollar question.
Ooh.
Can something be too real?
To connect with emotionally.
Yeah. It's a question that artists and philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Wow.
And it's especially relevant now in the age of digital technology.
Oh, totally. Because the lines between reality and simulation are constantly blurring.
Exactly.
It's like, are we so used to seeing perfection on screen that we've lost the ability to connect with the imperfections.
The things that make us human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in 2D animation, those imperfections are celebrated.
They're part of the charm.
Totally. Like the wobbly lines, the exaggerated expressions, even like slightly wonky character designs.
It's all part of the appeal.
It gives it character.
Right. And it reminds us that even though these are, talking animals or fantastical creatures, they're ultimately creations of human imagination.
Yeah. It's like we can see the hand of the artist in every frame.
And there's something really beautiful about that connection.
Totally.
It's like a reminder that we're all in this together.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, but here's the thing that really got me.
Yeah.
You love the first two Toy Story movies, which are 3D.
Right.
And it seems like that kind of contradicts your preference for 2D.
Yeah, it seems that way at first glance.
But you have this whole explanation for why Toy Story works for you.
I do. I think it's because those films came out in like 95.
Yeah.
When 3D was still like brand new.
Yeah, the early days.
They were still figuring out how to make characters move realistically. Like the technology was so different back then.
It was.
Like even the textures and stuff.
Yeah. When you look back now, it looks a little rougher on the edges.
But that's part of the charm for me. Like you can see that they were experimenting, pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and they were so focused on the storytelling.
Pixar always has been.
Yeah, even with those limitations, they created characters that we loved.
Totally.
And stories that resonated with like everyone.
Exactly.
And I think that leads to something you said that I found really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You still want to connect with 3D animation.
Oh, absolutely.
I haven't given up on it.
No way. I'm hoping that technology will find a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, to kind of bring that emotional depth that you're looking for. You even talked about a hybrid approach.
Yeah, like Beyblade Metal Saga.
Oh, right.
Which mixes 2D and 3D.
It was like a cool blend of the two.
Yeah. Could that be the future?
Maybe. Or maybe there's something else entirely.
Great. Some new technique we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah. Animation has come so far.
It really has.
It's exciting to think about where it's going next.
Yeah, totally.
But while we wait for all that, we have all these remakes and adaptations.
Yeah, you had some thoughts about those.
Well, I mean, some of them just don't capture the magic of the originals.
Right.
Like Aladdin and The Little Mermaid.
Those were both originally 2D.
And then they got the live action treatment.
Lots of 3D elements.
And I don't know, something just felt off.
Lost in translation.
Yeah.
Like they were trying to cash in on nostalgia
So,
without understanding what made the original so special.
like they were missing the soul.
The heart.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about those remakes that fall short?
Well, you actually had a really interesting suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
You said filmmakers should focus on reimagined adaptation.
Instead of straight up remakes.
Yeah. So not just recreating the original beat for beat.
Take the core themes
Yeah.
or the characters.
And do something new with them.
Make it fresh.
Yeah. You even mentioned a live action Toy Story.
Oh, yeah. I'd be curious to see that.
Me too. Although part of me is like terrified.
Why?
Because some stories just feel so tied to their original animation style.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine them working in any other format.
Like trying to turn a song into a painting.
Exactly. You can do it,
But it's not the same.
yeah, it loses something.
A good analogy.
It really speaks to like the power of each medium.
Each one has its own strengths.
And its own way of connecting with the audience.
Yeah.
And then you brought up manga and comic book
Oh, yeah.
and how you're kind of worried about them getting the 3D or live action treatment.
Especially with Disney.
Yeah, especially with Disney.
They love their remakes.
They do.
And they just acquired Marvel.
So it's like a valid concern.
Right. Like those mediums have their own visual language
Yeah.
and storytelling traditions.
And there's a worry that those could be lost.
Yeah, and transcend.
Yeah, it's like we're in this age of cinematic universes.
Everything's connected.
Yeah, which is cool, but
But we have to be careful
yeah, we don't want to lose the individual artistry.
of each medium.
Exactly.
It's about respecting the source material.
Yeah. Sometimes the best way to honor a story,
To let it be
to let it exist in its original form.
and appreciate it for what it is.
Totally.
So where do you think that leaves us then?
Well, it seems like there's this tension.
Between.
Your love of 2D and wanting to connect with 3D.
Even though it hasn't quite clicked for me yet.
Yeah, but you're still open to it.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And I think that reflects a bigger conversation about
Yeah.
how technology is impacting art.
It's changing everything.
Yeah. And we're excited about the possibilities.
The new ways of telling stories.
Yeah. But we're also a little wary.
Of losing something precious.
Yeah. Like we're walking this tightrope.
Between tradition and progress.
Exactly.
I think there might be a generational thing at play here, too.
Oh, interesting. Like how...
Well, you grew up with 2D animation.
I did. Yeah.
It's part of your childhood.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it would have a really strong emotional resonance for you.
Like it's part of my DNA.
Yeah.
That's actually a really cool way to think about it.
It's like those certain smells or songs
Yeah,
that can trigger specific memory.
totally. Like Proust and his Madeleines.
Oh, it's that?
Like our brains are wired to connect with the art we grew up with.
I think you're right.
It's fascinating though, because even with that like deep connection to 2D,
Yeah.
you're not writing off 3D animation entirely.
No, not at all.
Like you're still hoping that it can evolve.
Yeah, find its own way to be emotionally engaging.
It's almost like you're challenging 3D to step up its game.
I think that's a great way to put it. Like, hey, 3D, I know you can do better. Show me what you got.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole conversation so interesting.
Yeah.
It's not about being like 2D is better or 3D is the future or whatever.
Right. It's about appreciating both.
Yeah. And seeing how they can both push the boundaries of animation.
And storytelling in general.
Totally. And you brought up something that I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Like maybe certain stories are just better suited to certain animation styles.
Oh, yeah. Like you mentioned Toy Story.
Yeah, with its themes of childhood imagination.
And the secret lives of toys.
Yeah, like maybe that just works really well in 3D.
It's playful.
Yeah.
And it's tangible.
The toys feel real.
Yeah.
Like you could reach out and touch them.
Exactly. And maybe that wouldn't have worked as well.
It's interesting to think about.
It is. Like, what if The Lion King had been made in 3D originally?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Would it have had the same impact with those themes of loss, responsibility, and like the circle of life?
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
It is. And maybe 3D would have made it feel too real.
Or maybe it would have brought a whole new dimension to the story.
That's true. We'll never know.
It's fun to speculate, though.
It is. But it all comes back to that idea of like the interplay between form and content. Right. How the way a story is presented affects how we experience it.
Exactly. And it makes me wonder if some stories are more adaptable
Than others.
Yeah, like some can be translated into different mediums,
And still retain their magic.
while others might lose something in the process.
It's true. It's like trying to adapt a Shakespeare play into a musical.
Oh, yeah. Some work better than others.
Exactly.
And I think that speaks to the importance of respecting the original work.
Absolutely. Especially when we're talking about adaptations and remakes.
Yeah, you made a really good point in your essay about that.
Right.
Like, filmmakers need to be sensitive to the fact that,
These are stories that people love.
yeah, they hold a special place in our heart.
And you can't just mess with that.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between honoring the legacy.
And making it feel fresh for new audience.
It's a tough job.
It is.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. It's been a great deep dive.
So to wrap things up,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with one final thought.
A question to ponder.
Yeah. Could it be that certain stories, like Toy Story,
Lend themselves better to 3D?
yeah, because of their themes or their target audience,
What do you think makes some narratives more adaptable,
to different animation styles?
while others lose their magic?
Something to think about.
As you continue exploring the world of animation.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.